They took legendary machines, icons loved by millions, and ruined them. Not by accident, not by time, but by decisions so dumb, so greedy, and so shocking that every true car lover still gets angry thinking about it. These weren't just cars, they were symbols of an era, masterpieces of design, engineering, and pure soul. And yet, they were disrespected, redesigned beyond recognition, or modernized so badly that fans still ask one question: how could they let this happen? Before we dive in, do me one favor. Hit the like button, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into automotive madness. All right, back to the disaster. Today, I'll show you 5 classic cars that were absolutely butchered, either by terrible redesigns, cheap cost-cutting, or corporate decisions that made zero sense. Trust me, after you see what they did to them, you'll be furious too. Number 5. 1942 Lincoln Zephyr. How a legend became a heavy shadow of its former self. When it comes to pre-war American cars, the Lincoln Zephyr inevitably comes to mind. Until 1941, it was one of the most stylish and elegant cars in the country. With its smooth lines, aerodynamic body, elongated silhouette, and hidden headlights, the Zephyr was considered the benchmark for the modern automobile. It was bold, expensive, technologically advanced, and looked like something from the future. Lincoln engineers truly took a step forward, and the market recognized it. But everything changed after 1942. The war completely halted civilian car production. Returning to the market in 1946, Lincoln decided to update its lineup. Instead of developing the Zephyr's unique style, designers opted for simplification. They abandoned the original aerodynamic lines, making the body wider, taller, and noticeably heavier. And this wasn't an evolution, but a virtual destruction of the previous design philosophy. Most importantly, after the war, Lincoln abandoned the very concept of the Zephyr. The model ceased to be a separate line. The name disappeared, and the design became a fragment of the overall Lincoln line, devoid of its own identity. What had previously made the Zephyr recognizable, the smooth lines, the streamlined front end, the minimalist details, all of that was gone. Instead, rougher, more massive panels, straight lines, and a heavy front end appeared. The car began to look traditional, not innovative. The reason was simple. The company needed to quickly recover after the war, produce simpler products, and minimize costs. Aerodynamic streamlining was no longer considered a priority, and Lincoln chose the path of mass luxury over bold engineering solutions. Technically, post-war Lincolns were quite good. They were reliable, comfortable, and powerful enough for their time. But the problem isn't the build quality, it's that the Zephyr had lost its soul. The car no longer stands out. Gone is the unique effect that once captivated passers-by. While the Zephyr was considered bold, unconventional, and progressive before 1941, after the war, it became just another large American sedan. From an automotive history perspective, the Zephyr's disappearance clearly demonstrates how war, austerity, and corporate decisions can destroy a unique product. The pre-war Zephyr was an important car. It inspired other brands, was an icon of aerodynamic design, and even today, its design is considered one of the best of the 1930s and 1940s. Unfortunately, the post-war models have lost all this legacy. If you look at the pre-facelift Zephyr and the post-war Lincolns, the difference is immediately striking. Before, it was a car worthy of a modern art museum. After, it was simply a well-built automobile built without a hint of daring. And it was this decision, the rejection of the original style, that fans still consider the company's main miscalculation. Number 4. 1936-1937 Chrysler Airflow. A car that was too bold for its time. The Chrysler Airflow is one of the most unusual and underrated cars in American history. In the mid-1930s, it became the first American car designed according to the laws of aerodynamics. It was a true revolution. While other manufacturers continued to produce angular bodies with raised fenders and vertical grills, Chrysler introduced a car that resembled a stream of air, sleek, rounded, and tuned in a wind tunnel. Engineers positioned the engine forward and the passengers closer to the center to improve balance and handling. For the era, such decisions were incredibly bold. The Airflow was faster, more stable at high speeds, and quieter than most sedans of the period. And in theory, it should have become a symbol of the future. But the public wasn't ready. The Airflow's design seemed too strange, too alien. People had trouble relating to cars with long hoods and sharp lines, while the Airflow's sleek contours seemed out of place. At the time, buyers were choosing style over engineering innovation, and the Airflow looked like something out of place. The problem was compounded by early production errors. In 1934, several early examples suffered welding defects, and rumors of unreliability spread across the country faster than the company could fix them. Even after the fix, the reputation was tarnished. People preferred reliable models, and the Airflow never achieved success. Starting in 1936, Chrysler tried to change the design, making it more familiar, but it didn't help. Sales declined, and competitors actively used the Airflow in their advertising, unsuccessfully. Ultimately, the project was canceled in 1937, leaving it one of the most sought-after and most controversial episodes in the brand's history. But from the perspective of automotive progress, the Airflow was essential for further advancement. It proved that aerodynamics wasn't a fad, but a necessity. And although it wasn't embraced by consumers at the time, the Airflow's ideas influenced a generation of cars in the 1940s and 1950s, which began to utilize its principles: a low center height, improved airflow, integrated fenders, and streamlined shapes. Today, the Airflow isn't considered a failure, but a car that came out too early. It was smarter, more progressive, and more thoughtful than its economists. And while it wasn't exactly the same before, it has now become one of the most fascinating legends of the pre-war era. It demonstrated how innovation can outpace the market on an intellectual level. Number 3. 1962 Plymouth Belvedere. The most controversial redesign in the brand's history. The 1962 Plymouth Belvedere is one of those cars that people say was a failure before it even hit the market. Before 1962, the Belvedere was a full-size, confident, and straightforward automobile. A large body, a solid stance, a wide dashboard. Everything buyers expected from a Plymouth. But in the early 1960s, Chrysler suddenly decided to change things. Acting on false rumors that competitor Chevrolet would downsize its models, management ordered the Belvedere, Satellite, and Fury to be downsized immediately. This decision became one of the biggest mistakes in the brand's history. The engineers literally worked in a hurry. Proportions were checked on the fly, the design was adjusted at the last minute, and the result was a car that looked odd even at first glance. It became narrower and taller, but it was no longer harmonious. The body lines were sharp, awkward, and a different shape, as if it had been assembled in several different projects. The front end was particularly criticized. Narrow headlights, a protruding grille, and oddly curved fenders created a feeling of unbalance. The rear end was also controversial. Instead of smooth panels, an angular, sharp design emerged, very different from the familiar American shapes of the early 1960s. Buyers wanted style, stability, and a confident image, a car that would stand out in every market. The situation was complicated by Chrysler's poor communication of its idea. The company was considering selling a smaller Belvedere as a new direction, but this appealed to an uneven audience. In 1962, Americans expected large, imposing cars. Downsizing, on the contrary, was not yet fashionable. Therefore, the Belvedere didn't look progressive, but simply small and odd. Today, the 1962 Belvedere is interesting primarily as an example of misguided strategy and drastic design changes. It demonstrates that even a good car can lose its market share if its appearance and positioning conflict with buyers' expectations. It was a bold move, but it was made at the wrong time and in the wrong direction. Number 2. 1961 Cadillac Fleetwood. A moment when luxury changed cautiously. The Cadillac Fleetwood of the early 1960s is an example of how a company that had defined the style of the king of luxury for many years suddenly changed course, and the 1961 model became the symbol of this turnaround. After the peak of design flourishes in the late 1950s, when Cadillac was the king of huge fins, chrome, and dramatic lines, the brand decided to embrace everything that made it recognizable. In 1961, Cadillac introduced an entirely new generation of Fleetwood, and the changes weren't just cosmetic, it was a true shift in philosophy. The car became noticeably smaller visually, the lines cleaner, more austere, and much more understated. The fins, which in 1959 had been a source of interest to photographers and observers, now seemed barely noticeable. The overall look became more linear, minimalist, and calm. The reason wasn't that Cadillac suddenly fell out of love with its famous fenders. The company simply realized that eras of design refinement were fading. By the early 1960s, buyers were growing tired of pretentiousness, and fashion had shifted sharply toward cleaner lines. GM management decided to act proactively, and in 1961, the Fleetwood became the first step into a new era of more restrained luxury. But the problem was that the changes were too drastic. Comparing the 1960 and 1961 models, it seems as if the designers decided overnight to eliminate almost everything associated with Cadillac. The signature grille became narrower, the bumpers thinner, and the rear end lost its finality. The car looked neat, but no longer inspired the respect that people bought Cadillacs for in the 1950s. Many brand representatives were less than thrilled with the redesign. For them, the Fleetwood symbolized luxury and responsibility. The 1961 model, despite its rigorous and high-quality design, had a more modest and less imposing appearance. Buyers were accustomed to Cadillacs being cars that dominated the road with their looks, original vehicles that tried more to follow trends than set them. At the same time, from a technical standpoint, the 1961 Fleetwood became an alternative. It retained the comfort, power, and build quality for which the brand was prized, but the design was cautious, which drew criticism. Cadillac was no longer considered the undisputed industry leader. It had become more closely aligned with its competitors, losing some of its individuality. Over the years, the design of the early 1960s has become more accepted, and today the 1961 Fleetwood values warmth and purity of form. But historically, this still marks the moment when Cadillac abandoned the boldness of the 1950s and made a shift toward a safer style. The redesign wasn't a disaster, but it did symbolize the end of an era. Cadillac's time as a visually dominant brand ended here. Number 1. 1961 Lincoln Continental. Luxury held hostage to minimalism. The 1961 Lincoln Continental is one of the most talked about cars of the early 1960s, and not because it was bad. On the contrary, it was one of the most stylish cars of the era. But fans of the old Lincoln still consider this model a turning point, when the brand abandoned its traditional luxury and redefined what an American luxury car should be. Before 1961, Lincoln was associated with massive long bodies, chromed seats, rugged lines, and opulent trim. Cars from 1958 to 1960 were presentations, sometimes too much so. They were renowned for their space, visual mass, and uncompromising luxury that literally screamed status. But sales were declining, and the company realized something had to change. In 1961, Lincoln introduced a new generation Continental, and it wasn't just another model, it was a radical reboot of the brand. The car was noticeably smaller, slimmer, and narrower. The design became incredibly austere: clean, straight panels, minimal chrome, a flat roof, and an almost architectural approach to form. Legendary designers Elwood Engel and John Navarra created a large car that looked completely different from anything Lincoln had ever made. The most recognizable element was the steel suicide doors, rear doors that opened against the direction of travel. This solution was both bold and functional. Getting inside truly became comfortable. The interior also changed. Everything became restrained, neat, and thoughtful. Decorative opulence was replaced by clean lines and minimalism, which seemed new and unusual at the time. But fans of pre-war and post-war Lincolns saw it differently. For them, the 1961 Continental looked too modest. Gone were the massive fenders, the distinctive silhouette, the sense that the car was trying to impress. The new Continental was stylish but unremarkable. It became fiery, but it ceased to be a shining symbol of American luxury. The car's engineering was good. It received an updated 7.0-liter V8, improved handling, and a level of comfort among its class. But it was the change in visual language that sparked controversy. Traditionalists believe Lincoln betrayed its roots in an attempt to modernize the brand. Critics were convinced that the company had shifted too abruptly from bold design to emphatic restraint. Today, the 1961 Continental is a recognized design icon. You call it one of the purest and most flawed cars of its time, but historically, it continues to explore how a sharp shift in style can influence its audience.